Good afternoon. Welcome to the FWW365 Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Lex. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I have big plans for the future for this channel beyond me just sitting and talking to you about different things related to health and wellness. So please like, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your non-friends, your associates, whomever it is. Today's topic is about, are you training the right way? Obviously, it's a new year. People are coming in. There's a lot are coming back or going back to the gym, and there's a lot of information out there. And one of the things that I've come to see as a person who's been a gym goer, who's a personal trainer, who's in the field, I see a lot of people weight training and doing other things that probably aren't the best for them. And what do I mean by that? I see a lot of young kids. There's so much information now on like YouTube and other social media platforms. People putting all kinds of information out there. And I think one of the things that's really gone on in terms of just training in general is people just do everything just because they saw it on, some influencer's page. And I think we need to begin to understand the differences in terms of why you're training, what you're training for, the time elapsed for it, and everything along those lines. So the first thing I want to talk about is I see a lot of young kids. I always see them in the gym, and it's great because when I was growing up, you were supposed to, it was like 15 or 16 before you could really start weight training because the belief was you were stunting your growth. Everybody, of course, wants to be tall. Nobody wants to be 5'5", but so what ended up happening was you didn't start weight training till like 15, 16. And in those days, especially if you were at the high school level, they had teachers who were in the gym. There were no, at least not to my knowledge, were any strength and conditioning specialists or personal trainers who were in there to guide you through a proper exercise program. It was always one of the teachers who happened to lift, some of the time, and they just happened to be in there and just, basically keeping the place open for a couple of hours. And so what has happened now is, which is great, I love seeing it. I love seeing the young people in there going in, working out. Of course, they're working out together. A lot of guys, a lot of men and women or young guys and teenagers, or young teenagers, I should say, are in there working hard, lifting, and it's great, and I love it. But what I also tend to see is a lot of ego lifting and a lot of lifting and training related to vanity. We see it all the time. Everybody's doing the squats. They're not doing the squats because they're a good exercise. They're doing the squats because it's great for your butt. It makes your abs look better. And so what I see a lot of, and I saw it even when I was working in the physical therapy office, is you get a lot of overuse injuries, and you get a lot of injuries that could have been avoided if these individuals knew how to train better, knew how to train more efficiently. Instead of spending 2 hours in there, talking to your friends and everything along those lines, you could spend 45 minutes doing a circuit, and an effective circuit. One of the other things you always see, especially with young boys who are growing, is they get a lot of stretch marks, like in their chest area, because they're trying to lift weight that they have no business lifting. I'm a proponent of young people lifting, but it has to be done in a way that is effective. What people don't realize is when you're growing, you shouldn't be squatting a heavy amount of weight. I know, there's a lot of football players out there and rugby and kind of these collision sports, as well as contact sports like basketball, etc. And they're lifting as if their body can handle 225 on the squat rack. And say you're 160 pounds, you've never lifted before, so you see what everybody else is doing, and now all of a sudden you've possibly just injured yourself from doing an exercise you shouldn't be doing. There's so many different ways that you can lift in an effective manner. Squats are a good thing, but you can't do 225. I don't personally recommend that a teenager who is still growing does any type of back squats. I would say till about 16, 17, 18, unless you've had like a growth spurt or something along those lines. Like if you're 6'6", 6'7", you're probably not going to be squatting heavy. It's just too much range. It's too much of, it's too far to go. when you're 5'11" or something like that, you can get away with it. When you're shorter, it's a little bit easier because you have a lower center of gravity. You're lower to the ground, and you won't have to work as hard. Back squats, I wouldn't recommend that any teenager do back squats till about, I'd say 16, and start very light. I mean, once you start very light. You start with no bar, you get the form down. There's other ways you can do it. You can do front squats with a dumbbell or a kettlebell. Or you can do front squats with just the bar by itself. You can do front squats with the barbell with maybe some bands on it, just so you have a little bit more resistance. I don't like the idea of a kid who's still growing putting weight on their spine, because as I've talked about before, we think about the spine. What is it doing? The spine is this. Your spinal cord is this long instrument, I guess I would call it, that has vertebrae, that has gelatin that essentially separates the vertebrae. And what are you doing at 15, 16? You're going like this, and now you have gravity, and you have all this weight on your back. And what's it doing? It's compressing. That's what's happening to your back. Now, when you're 15, 16, doesn't mean much. But when you hit 30, you're going to run into back issues. So definitely, I would not recommend any back squatting. Front squats, I have no problems with. It doesn't put the same amount of pressure. I wouldn't recommend back squats, though, for any teenagers. I mean, I would go as high as 18, but I know it's unrealistic. But I would definitely say 16. Try to stay away from those things. But I know everybody's a little bit different. They're going to want to do it. There's a lot of ego lifting. So they're going to put, they're going to put 225, or in some cases, depending upon the size of the kid, 315 on there. And they're going to eventually not only run into back issues, but you're talking about knee issues and things along those lines. So definitely there should be a progression. But I would definitely say, just from my own feelings, 16 is probably the best time. There's other things, the bench press. I see a lot of the kids, they throw 225 on there, and they're with their friends, and they're trying to lift, and I'm like, look, you're going to end up hurting yourselves. You don't need to lift that much weight. Start with no bar, or probably the best thing for any teenager, or any young person, I should say, for that matter, is probably doing some dumbbell work. A lot of dumbbell work. There's three, you can do the upper, middle, lower. It's a great way to get your joints ready for the rigors of really heavy lifting, especially if you're going to be playing like football or rugby or something along those lines. Always progressively overloading. So if you start at 10 pounds, you go to 12.5, or if you start at 15, 17, 20, there's always a little bit of progressive loading that's going on. That should be going on, I should say, because a lot of people, they'll stick with the same weights all the time, and it's just not very good. It's just not, you're going to plateau eventually, and then all the gains that you made are going to slowly but surely dissipate. I would definitely say start with dumbbells. I mean, if you're younger, definitely the machines are the best way to go, just because it's a safe way to get yourself ready to do the heavy lifting when you go to more of the independent weights and everything along those lines. I'm trying to think of what else there is. If you're talking about like Olympic lifts and things like that, definitely you should be starting with no weight. I see a lot of kids in there, they're trying to do either a snatch or a clean. They don't know how to do it, so they're basically leaving themselves open to some type of a cervical issue or some type of a shoulder issue. If you can't do the work properly, just don't do it. I know it's a cool thing to do. It's on TV, and especially when the Olympics come around, and you see it on YouTube amongst other forms of social media, and so you think, oh, they're doing it, so I should do it as well. No, if you're I'm thinking of an example. Let's say if you're a baseball player, as an example, you don't really need to do that much heavy lifting. If you're a high school athlete, or if you're a baseball player or softball player, you don't really need to do Olympic lifts. I know you're trying to generate power, but your power doesn't come from you doing a snatch or doing a clean. Your power comes from your legs and your core. So what you should be doing, you should probably be doing a leg sled. Reasonable weight, don't go crazy. You don't gotta, you're not looking to max rep or anything along those lines, at least not at this point. Once again, you're getting your joints ready for heavier lifting in the future. You gotta start somewhere. You have to crawl before you walk. You have to walk before you run. And so, you don't need to do heavy Olympic lifts and things along those lines. It really depends on the sport that you're playing. That's a little more prevalent when you're talking about like football and rugby and contact and collision sports, I should say, not just contact, but collision sports. And even that, the big thing is you're trying to learn the proper technique so you can avoid injury. You're going to get injured. It happens. Trust. There's no avoiding it. That's why all these athletic trainers and physical therapists, that's how they stay employed and keep their businesses going, because eventually you're going to get injured. There's no getting around it. There's no running from it. But definitely, like I said, if you're a baseball player, if you're a soccer player, you don't really need to do too many Olympic lifts. You don't even need to do back squats for that matter. You can just do, basically, it's, if you're a baseball player, it's legs and core. Whether you're a pitcher, whether you're a hitter, it's basically legs and core. Everything else is just guiding. The arms, you can have, decent arms and things along those lines, but the arms are basically guiding the ball wherever it's going, especially if you're either an infielder or an outfielder. If you're a pitcher, the same thing. It's all legs. If you see those baseball players, they have tree trunk legs. Like, their thighs are massive. And they've got, even though some of them may not have like a six-pack, they have a good, strong core. And so all that kinetic chain leads to them being able to throw a 90-mile-an-hour, two-seam fastball. So that's the important thing. So for the younger people out there, don't try to ego lift. Lift for the particular sport and or activity that you're going to be involved with. Moving on, I would say to those who are, maybe you played collegiately or something along those lines, but you just didn't go pro. Once that part of your life is done, once that sports part of your life is done, there's no reason to try to lift like you were a football player, like you were in college. There's no reason. Because all that lifting you were doing, and I've seen a bunch of videos on it, even though they have, the top, performance enhancers and strength and conditioning specialists and everything like that, understand that you are eventually you in the long term are going to pay for the time that you spent doing all those lifts. I've seen videos of guys training for football. It's all, like I said, same thing. It's ego lifting. It's ego. So they got like 675 pounds on the squat, 1 rep max, which I get for football, but you're going to pay for that in the future. And under no circumstances should you be lifting beyond lifting like you were in college. You also shouldn't be consuming the same amount of calories. We know that now. You should see a lot of old like football players and baseball players. They would eat the same amount of calories that they did when they were in college, or playing professionally, as they do in their regular lives once they stop playing. So definitely stop with the ego lifting, because like I said, you're going to pay for it in the long term. It's going to hurt. You're going to have back issues, and that spine that we talked about that is lubricated and abundant when you're younger is going to start to close in slowly but surely. There's nothing you can do about it. There's no running from it. It's just biology. So definitely, if you can protect yourselves and you don't have to do that kind of lifting, don't. It's not worth it unless you're going to go to the pros. The range that somebody like that should be in post-collegiate career or post-pro career, semi-pro, whatever the case might be, they should be in the 10 to 12 rep range. You can go a little bit higher too, 15 if you want. Excuse me. And you should be lifting moderate weight. You can progress. You should always progressively overload, even if it's like a 5-pound difference, just to make your body adjust. But you should not be lifting like a madman or a madwoman like you were in college. That part of your life is probably going to be over with. So you take it easy. The big thing is you don't want to hurt yourself, which is probably going to happen. But if you can limit it, because that way you can continue training. That way you can continue being able to go to the gym and enjoy your life and everything along those lines. Excuse me. Now, to those people who are 30 and over, you should definitely stop ego lifting, because now you're 30, even though 30 is not, even though I know people talk about 30 as the new 20, which is great from a fitness age, but you're still going to have to deal with the varying issues of your past. I see a lot of people, especially they get into their lives, they have kids, and then the new year comes around and they're like, oh, I got to get back to what I was doing once upon a time. And I always say to people, start slow. Don't try to do what you were doing, 6 months earlier. You're not going to be able to. Your body's deconditioned, depending upon the person, really deconditioned, especially if you weren't doing anything for those. Let's say even 3 months. I won't go crazy with 6 months. Let's say 3 months. Don't think you're going to go back into the gym and hit 225 on the bench. I've seen a lot of guys after 3 or 4 reps who have the bench, they have the Olympic bar with the 225 on it. Land on the chest. You got to jump out of what you were doing to help them get it up. Your body's not accustomed to it. You got to start slow. Everything that you're doing, everything's got to be in moderation. I'm like I said before, I'm all for progressive overloading. I'm all for constantly challenging your body, but you also have to understand you got to take a step back. You got to put your ego aside, take a step back, and just start very light. Even if you feel like, oh, this is, I was doing blah, blah, blah before. Oh, I was doing 225 with 10 reps. Well, that was 3 months ago, and you stopped. For whatever reason, family, whatever the case might be. I'm not here judging. I'm just simply saying your body's like, nope, you stopped 3 months ago. You were drinking Heinekens for the past 3 months. I know this is, a lot of people, especially, like I said, with the new year coming around, they're waiting for summer season. Oh, the summer's coming around, especially if you live on, if you live in the Northeast. The summer's coming around. I got to look good without my shirt on and the whole bit. And they don't realize that this is a forever thing. This isn't I'll get ready for the summer. That's cool. When you're like 20, you can get away with that. When you're like 30, you can't. Metabolism slows down. Life gets in the way. So you can't get in the workouts that you were once accustomed to. And so I always tell people, make sure when you're starting over, because that's what essentially it is. I don't care if it's a month. I don't care if it's a month. When you're starting over, you need to make sure that you take baby steps. Don't go crazy. Don't lift to the point where you're potentially putting yourself at risk for injury, because when those injuries hit, especially over the age of 30, your body does not recover the same. And if your body's not recovering the same, guess what's going to happen? You're going to run into a bunch of issues, and it's going to take you longer to recover from it. And then once again, you're out for an extended period of time that you originally wouldn't be out with if you did things the more effective way, I should say. Maybe not proper, but the more effective way. People age 40 and up, 40, 50, you guys know who you are. Just keep it simple. All you're doing at this point, unless you're trying to lose some weight or something like that, is you're maintaining. Excluding like the outliers like bodybuilders and people like that, your job is to maintain. Work hard, but maintain. Maintain your, whether it's your physique, your health. Definitely, like I've mentioned before in other videos, definitely you're seeing your doctors more, especially past the age of 35. You're seeing your doctors, you're seeing your chiropractors, you're seeing all these medical type people, physical therapists, etc. Because now it really starts to slow down. Now all of a sudden you wake up in the morning and you need a couple minutes just to get yourself going. And when you go to the gym, it takes longer. Make sure you're doing your warm-ups too. When you're younger, it doesn't matter as much because your muscles are pliable, you're full of collagen. You need to warm up when you get older, especially when you hit 30. You start 40, 50, your warm-up's going to be longer. Possibly look into like a yoga or, some other form other than weight training. Some other form of exercise beyond that. Pilates, the reformer, I've done it in the past, it's great. Yoga, I've done in the past, it's great. Maybe some kind of a mixed martial art, because especially once you hit 35 and above, you're not looking to, except for, like I said, bodybuilders and people like that, but for the most part, you're looking to keep your weight down because your muscles aren't going to be the same. Your muscles aren't going to be as, what's the word I'm looking for? Your muscles aren't going to be as pliable as they were when you were 20 and 25. So definitely look into other forms of exercise beyond just weight training. Definitely. I think Tom Brady talks about it all the time. Pliability. You want to have that flexibility. All right. That collagen starts to just naturally leave your body, so those muscles get tighter. So what do you want to do? You want to do things to make sure that you're loosening those muscles. So definitely, I'm a huge proponent of yoga, Pilates, and other forms of exercise, kind of outside of the weight training aspect of it. Get your cardio in as well. That you can do, even if it's 20 minutes a day. Always, like I said, progress yourself up so that it's more challenging, so that your body has to adjust and exert more energy. Obviously, at this point, you're watching your caloric intake. I mean, pretty much any age, but when you're younger, it doesn't really matter because you're probably playing a sport and burning it off anyway. But especially 40, 50, work on your flexibility. Things along those lines. Like I said, I can't harp on it enough. Yoga is such a huge and it's a great form of exercise. It's a great form of exercise. There's no judgment in there. You just go in, you do what you're gonna do, you sweat. Especially if you do hot yoga, you're gonna sweat. You're probably gonna lose 5 pounds just from water weight. I mean, you'll get it back, but you'll feel so much lighter. You'll feel so much more energetic. It's really amazing, even for a guy like me who loves to weight train. Given my age now, I'm like, I have to be more flexible. That way you can wake up in the morning. It'll help to, I'm not going to say it's not a cure-all, obviously, but it helps to heal a lot of ailments, especially low back issues, which I think I mentioned before, 75 to 80% of Americans have a problem in their, especially in their lumbar region. As I've talked about before, definitely have a good team around you. Doctor, physical therapist, chiropractor, personal trainer, yoga instructor. I can go on and on. I'm not going to bore you with that. But definitely have that around you. Work on your flexibility. Obviously, especially going into once you hit past 40, middle age, 50, 60, 70s, if you're, God willing, you live that long. So definitely those are the things that I think people should be considering based upon their age and what their activities are. Take care of yourselves. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.